Good afternoon. Welcome to this April 19th meeting of the Rotary Club of West Jacksonville. Good to see y'all. As Palmer Bell comes up to give our invitation and Mike Crumpler to lead our pledge, if you would just reach around and say hello to the folks around you.
Mr. Baker, I'm glad to say that. Yeah.
Palmer's going to
Watch Palmer.
Please join me for our invocation. Heavenly Father, we live in a world of confusion. Help us be voices of truth. We live in a world of fear. Give us hearts of peace. We live in a world of loss. Give us hands of service. We ask for your blessings on our food, our conversation, and fellowship, for it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance to the greatest nation on earth.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you so much, Palmer and Mike. Appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. Want to give a shout out to, glad you're up here. Want to give a shout out to House District Governor Jerry McCool and Alton Yates and Allie, who are joining us by Zoom. And when 2 weeks ago, I asked Kevin Hurd to stay up here, and I think I embarrassed him. Today, I might be embarrassing someone else. I don't know if I'm the only one that didn't know this, but did y'all know that a book was written about Alton Yates?
Yes.
Yes.
Did y'all know that? So Alton, we are proud of you, man. We are real proud of you. So this book is called Moving Forward: From Space Age Rides to Civil Rights Sit-ins with Airman Alton Yates. So I think that deserves a round of applause.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Alton, I think you have some splaining to do. So congratulations, Alton. All right, we have some pop-ups today. Well, first, last chance to buy your raffle tickets. Larry's in the back corner back there. No, he was not put in the corner, but he is in there. It's not good bad behavior. There's a sign-up sheet on your table to sign up for committees for next year during Dane's year as president. And I think it was mentioned at least once. You can sign up and volunteer, or you will be voluntold. And I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
That's not supposed to Alton. It was never about a hot dog or a Coke.
The second book that Alton wrote. It was never about a hot dog and a Coke.
It was about the sit-ins and Woolworths in 1957.
Do you want me to take it?
Yeah.
With only having one mic, it's making it tough. What he just said was that Al had written another book that was not about the hot dogs and the Coke. And it has to deal with the Woolworth sit-ins when they actually went to the counters there. So not only are you an author, it seems like you'd be an author twice. Thank you, Al.
Great, thank you. Thank you for making that point. Thank you for clarifying, Joe. Okay, Lee Davis has a pop-up. Yes, I just wanted to let you all know that we're working on May the 3rd or social. We had a couple of events kind of come up and move around. So right now you can mark your calendars. I'm 99% sure we're going to have an iguana on the park. So I'm excited. We haven't been there yet. So we're still working on that. We will have that email out this coming week. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. And I believe we have a blood drive coming up on May the 17th. And that will be here. I believe that's correct. So, so put that on your calendars also, please. And we have a board meeting today immediately following our regular meeting here. Also, Tim Johnson asked that you let him know if you have any ideas for speakers for the next Rotary year. So it's Tim Johnson, speakers for next Rotary year. So you've got your assignments now, calendar appointments, May the 3rd, social, May the 17th, blood drive. Don't forget President's Night was moved from June the 28th to June the 21st. Sign up for committees, send speaker ideas to Tim Johnson. Got all that? Repeat after me. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, any pop-ups I missed besides Alberta?
Pardon me, June 21st, the President's Night?
June 21st, President's Night in the evening. Alberta has a pop-up, and then she's going to give us the family of Rotary also. Alberta?
Grimes asked that I remind you that we have some seats available for the tour of the Emerald Trail this Friday morning. Starts at 9 o'clock and you meet in the parking lot, Cummer parking lot. And it's about 2 hours and you get on the little trucking ATVs and go around and see where the Emerald Trail is already begun. And it's a really exciting project. If you would like to go, I've got all the information and I would love to have you on this tour Friday. So just see me after the meeting. And for Family of Rotary, we all know that the information about Dave Collier's funeral is on the 29th of April, 11 o'clock at Riverside Presbyterian Church. Mr. Holdfields was this past week and James Regan called Hardage today, but they don't have a date for his service yet. And the other information I have is Rawls' father has had a procedure, a stent put in at Baptist, and he's recovering there. So let's keep him in our prayers. The birthdays, Rob Frazier is on the 17th, Doug Benfield is on the 21st, and Jerry McCool is on the 26th. Is there any other family of Rotary? Thank you.
Thank you, Alberta. If you did not see Dave Collier's obituary,
Wow.
you need to see it. It was so
Wow.
Dave Collier.
So
And I actually have a copy up here if you want to read it. It was so Dave Collier. It was great. So. Okay, weekly raffle. Larry, you ready?
Doesn't mean that's what it is.
And, all right, the last 4 digits, 4842.
There is a King of Hearts in here somewhat.
Sure. there is. So the proceeds from the weekly raffle will be used for our student programming, for our student programs. And one of the thoughts, we haven't discussed as a board yet, but this is a pretty cool book. So it might be a thought to get some of these for some of the kids. Is a not a little kid book, but like a mid-range kid book. Maybe get some of these for the schools. So, but we have other programming too, Rotaract, Interact, et cetera, et cetera.
3 of Hearts is gone. Okay.
You don't mind either?
That means your odds are better next week.
How many cards are left?
More than we've drawn,
Right.
right? Still a lot. A lot. Let's just leave it at a lot.
We'll leave it at a lot. 41.
Kim Baker has just informed me that today is Paul Harris's birthday.
Happy
Right.
birthday.
I should know that, shouldn't I? Okay, with that, Sergeant at Arms elect William Milne is going to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians, and then PDG Ken Baker is going to introduce our speakers.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Well, as of about 2 minutes ago, we did not have any guests or visiting Rotarians. So unless something has changed in the last 2 minutes, that is all we have for today. Has anybody popped in under that category?
I'm Jerry Kelly up in the district area, talking about grants. I'm talking to your incoming on grants for 23.
Wonderful. Well, welcome, Jerry. It's very good to have you. Here. So given the tradition of the Sergeant at Arms, I felt it only appropriate with my term coming up in the fall that I tell a little story. There was a mother who had 2 very disobedient sons, and they were about 8 and 10 years old. And just for the sake of it, we'll call them Caleb and Tyler. Those names are very important to me. And the mother got so frustrated that every single day, whenever there was trouble, they were sure to be close by. And so she had the idea, I'm going to take them to church and I'm going to have them talk to the minister. So one at a time, Caleb goes in first, the more conservative 10-year-old, goes in to visit with the minister. And the minister looks him dead in the eye and says, Caleb, where is God? And Caleb sits there and says, Caleb, where is God? Caleb, where is God? Immediately, Caleb runs out the door, confronts Tyler right in the face and said, we have a major problem. God is missing, and the minister thinks that we took him away.
That concludes my report.
Let's see if I've been over far enough, Joe, can you hear me?
Yep.
William, you're following the Milne tradition of great speeches.
Thank you.
First, I do want to thank Kevin Hurd for publishing Marshall's bio in the Westward, because had he not published it, I would have been compelled to tell you all about it, and Marshall would have had any time to speak, because that's how many things he's done for Rotary in his life and his career. So I do have one bit of news that is not in that bio. It's kind of something new, I think, and that's Marshall was recently selected by the Rotary International president to be a president's rep at the district conference next week in Nebraska. That's a huge deal, and only the best of the best get selected. I urge you to read Marshall's bio if you haven't already read it in this first time. I didn't know Marshall until he joined Rotary. I knew his dad. We were business partners in relationship. He did business with us and we did business with him. So when Marshall joined Rotary, I said, Rodney, I'm really glad that Marshall joined our Rotary Club. I think he'll be a good Rotarian. Rodney said, and I'll quote this one because I'll never forget it. He told me Marshall would do whatever he wanted to do and he would accomplish it in his time. So Marshall, that's what you've done for Rotary. No truer words were ever spoken. We have a little trivia question for you. What's the largest landmass city in the U.S.?
Jacksonville.
Yeah. Then why on earth would anybody pick Jacksonville to run every single street? You're about to find out.
Pick it up. Yeah. So thank you, Kim, for that introduction. And yeah, why on earth would anybody pick the city of Jacksonville to run every street? And sometimes I ask myself that question. So in the city of Jacksonville, there are 14,760 streets covering just under 5,000 miles. As of today, I have run nearly 10,000 of those streets, wow, covering almost 65%, just over 4,000 miles. If you want, take out your phones and go to a browser and type in every.st, and that'll take you to a website where you can see the map of everywhere that I've been so far. So it's every.st. The first entry is going to say check the progress here, and you can kind of take a look and see where I've been. So why on earth would I do this? Well, early on in my career, I was doing a lot of traveling for business, and I would go for runs, and really wasn't familiar a lot of times with the areas where I was running. And so to make sure that I didn't get lost, I would always do this little process where I would run up and down every street around a hotel. That way I would never be too far away from the hotel, and I would make sure I could find my way back. About, 2012, I was preparing and trying to get motivated to train for the Jacksonville Marathon, and I was having a little bit of problems, kind of getting the mojo going, getting motivated to train. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to run every street in Avondale, run up and down every street and get to know my neighborhood, Avondale and Riverside, and kind of understand what's a couple of streets beyond Park Street and Roosevelt and Purcell and what's in these little neighborhoods. And so I did that. And it was a great way to get the training kick started and had a really great time doing that. A couple years later, I thought, well, I'm going to do this again, but this time I'm going to run every street in Riverside, Avondale, and Ortega. And so did that and got kick started with my training and had a good time with it. And kind of, gave that up, didn't do it for a while. And a friend of mine told me, there's this guy named Ricky Gates, and he's a sponsored athlete by Solomon Sports. He just ran across the country, 3,700 miles from New York City to San Francisco. And now he's going to try to run every street in San Francisco. And so I thought, that's pretty familiar. I've done that before, something like that. So I started corresponding with Ricky, and Ricky was telling me about his plans, and we kind of talked about strategies, and rules are very important when you do this kind of stuff. You start where you left off and all that kind of stuff. And so we were corresponding, and he told me about this new application called City Strides. And essentially City Strides takes all of your runs and aggregates them as a heat map on a map, so you can see where you've been, where you need to go. And it actually tells you where you haven't been, so you can go and find those nodes and go run those streets. And so he showed me that map, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna run every street in Jacksonville, forgetting that it's the largest landmass in the United States. And so I started doing it. I started doing it August of 2018. But when I started the project, I had to change my rules, because up to that point, every run had to originate from my house. I told you rules are very important and stuff. And I thought, if I'm going to run every street in Jacksonville, I cannot leave from Fairfax Manor to run every street. And so I started driving out to the neighborhoods and doing this. And I remember telling a police officer friend of mine, I'm going to run every street in Jacksonville. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I said, "Yeah, I think even when I go into areas that are deemed, not as nice, there's quiet periods. There's quiet times in these neighborhoods when, bad guys have to sleep, right?" And so he said, there's a lot of truth to that. Between 5 and 7, a lot of times it's 4:30 to 7. It's quiet. The bad folks are probably sleeping after, raising heck all night. And so started running and hitting these neighborhoods, and I'll tell you, I map out the runs ahead of time, so I know where I'm going. I do take a look at Google Maps, and now you can do with Google Map that kind of street view to kind of understand where I'm going to go and what I'm going to be doing. And I do look at the crime map to see what's happened in that area in the last 6 months. Have there been any homicides, any assaults, any armed robberies? And I still run in those neighborhoods. Anyway, this week I'm running East Side, Springfield, and on one run, I counted the 4 shot spotters. On the other, I counted the 1 shot spotter. And when you're running up to it, you see the red and the blue lights, all right, I'm in an area where there's a lot of violent activity and people aren't snitching, so they have shot spotters up. The place that I saw the most concentration of those up to this point was kind of about 103rd Street. I saw a lot of them out there. But now Springfield and East Side, there's a number of those. But I did create a number of rules to do this. I did tell you that the rules are important. I have a rule that whenever I drive somewhere to go run, the total time of the commute has to be less than the time spent running. So I'm not going to spend 30 minutes to go run a mile. So if I drive 30 minutes, that's an hour round trip. I got to make sure that I'm going to be running for at least a mile. That's just to be efficient and to make sure that I don't waste my time driving, spend more time driving than running. Other rules, if I typically park in banks, they're well lit and have cameras, Walmart parking lots, Publix parking lots, grocery stores, stuff like that. A lot of churches have great parking lots that they're not using during the week. And the great thing about some of these places is they're well lit and they have cameras. So if I do go for a run and I don't come back, they can at least look at the camera and see, well, Marshall left here about 5 in the morning. Never came back. So he was in this area somewhere. So maybe that tied with the shot spotter, they'll figure it out. I don't know. But that's one of the rules. And then the other rule is if I leave my car, and I don't leave my car if I see someone, because I don't want someone to see me leaving my car to go out for a run and be waiting for me when I come back. And so that's another one of the rules. Other things is, I try to keep it pretty concentrated where I'm running. I don't try to get too far away from the car like I did with the hotels. I want to stay pretty close so that I'm never too far away from the car in case I need to get back to it. But right now, I have developed an algorithm that I use to kind of create these maps in my head so that when I'm running, if I forget my route, I can kind of remember, all right, you go all the way back to the end of the neighborhood and you start working back and forth, the cul-de-sacs coming back to the front. And because of cul-de-sacs and dead ends and stuff like that, it's super hard to be efficient because there's 5,000 miles of streets in Jacksonville. I've already run over 4,000, but I've only hit 65%. So there's always going to be a lot of overlap. This is actually a mathematical graph theory called the Chinese postman or the traveling salesman, which says, what is the shortest distance you can traverse to cover every edge of a route? And so there's some algorithms, and I tried to ask UPS if I could use their trucks algorithms that they use to map routes because they're super efficient. But I'm okay taking left turns. I know they're not. But so I have developed these algorithms in my head. So when I go for a run, I kind of remember where I'm going and how I'm going to get back to the car. I am about 65% efficient, and I found a website that helps me track that efficiency. Always striving to become more efficient, but I'm kind of resolved to the fact that it's going to take a while to hit, all 5,000 streets because you can only be so efficient with these runs. So that's kept me pretty busy. I can tell you some of the observations that I've made running through Jacksonville. And just this past weekend, we did RILA, and part of it was the Covey, 7 habits. And one of them is seek to understand before being understood. And I can tell you that going out into these neighborhoods, it's sobering to kind of see how people live. We are so blessed to live in the communities that we live in. And you go into some of these neighborhoods, and I will tell you, I don't believe there are truly bad neighborhoods. I believe everyone is just trying to survive, trying to make a way. But I believe there's some bad people that go into these neighborhoods and do bad things. And when I go into these neighborhoods, I see well-kept houses, but they're in a bad neighborhood. Well, there's nice people in these bad neighborhoods. It's just, again, the bad people that come in and do bad things. But it's very telling when you leave from what's considered a nice neighborhood, going into maybe a bad neighborhood. So you'll start seeing more and more discarded tires on the side of the road. You'll see more litter. You'll see a lot of feral cats. There's just very obvious things that you'll see as you start going into these neighborhoods that have been deemed not as nice. I can tell you, it's amazing sometimes going into some of these neighborhoods, and I can't believe I'm in Jacksonville. I mean, it's almost as though it's in a third world country. I mean, it's sad to see. I know there's a neighborhood off of Sunbeam, and I was telling a friend of mine who's a firefighter about this neighborhood, and he said, "Oh, I know that neighborhood." He said, "We can barely take the fire truck in because the roads are so bad. The truck bottoms out going through all those potholes." I mean, just junk cars in the front yards, but just beyond these houses, you could see little McMansions where they built this new neighborhood. And so it just, the dichotomy of this neighborhood, which looks like a third world country, backed up against these brand new, beautiful homes. It's really telling that, you know, it's not even across the railroad tracks. Sometimes they share a fence, some of the neighborhoods that have and don't have. And so I think, you know, this has really taught me to understand that there's just, it's amazing to be in Jacksonville sometimes and see that there are pockets like this. There's a neighborhood off of Phillips over by the Walmart. I don't know if you guys have heard about this one, called Larson. And just 5-10 years ago, these people finally got running water in their homes. We're in Jacksonville, Florida, and people didn't have running water. Up until recently, they relied on wells for their water, but there was a Superfund site not too far away, and all their wells were polluted. And they couldn't get the funding to put running water in from JEA into these neighborhoods until a collective, I think it was the Builders Collective or whatever, came in and helped get running water. I remember running past a church, and in front of the church it said, "Bring your gallon jugs and we'll fill them with clean water for you." And you think that's right in the middle, right in the heart of Jacksonville, Florida, that there's neighborhoods like this. And so I think it really gave me an empathy for understanding, you know, the conditions and the way that people live in Jacksonville. There's another one, I told you to seek to understand before being understood. There's an even better one. I just learned from this great philosophizer, Ted Lasso. He said, "Don't be judgmental, be curious." And I think that's it. You know, growing up on the west side in Avondale, you know, I had friends on the south side and they always talk about the west side. West side, I mean, come on, you don't know anything about the west side. You know, and I think going into these neighborhoods and understanding, really, it helps me understand so much more about our city. There's all sorts of crazy stories. I'm not afraid of people, and there's very few people on the streets at these times of the morning. Typically, I try to say hello to everybody. I don't want to, you know, not show respect to anybody, I guess I would say, in some of these neighborhoods. I always want to make sure I give respect and I say hello. But people don't bother me unless they're on a bicycle, because I know someone on a bicycle could chase me down. People that are walking, I like to outrun them. And actually, the other day, I was over by McCoy Creek Boulevard, and there was a guy on a bicycle, and the guy was downright hunting me. I was running down one street, and I saw him at the end of the street on his bike, and so I quickly turned and went another way. He was then at the end of that street, and then I quickly made a beeline back to my car, and he was probably 100 feet behind me by the time I got in my car. And when I got in to take off, he was hiding in the bushes. He wouldn't come out of the bushes. So people on bicycles scare me. The other things that scare me are dogs. There are a lot of dogs in Jacksonville that aren't on chains and aren't behind fences. And funny stories over off of 103rd Street. I run alone. This day I was running with three of my buddies, and we run down the end of this dead end. And this is the area. They just had the major bust last week with the 19 people that were arrested. This was that neighborhood. And we ran to the end of the street, and this dumb little yappy dog was at the end of that street and started barking his head off. So we turned on the dead end, and we're coming back to go to the next street. And around this mobile home comes 3 pit bulls heading straight for us. And we just kind of stood there and kind of stood our ground and made sure that we didn't do anything quickly. And truly, the dogs were just defending their house. And so we slowly were able to turn around and walk away and then start running really fast. So we got away from them, but I've been chased by pregnant pit bulls. I actually got hit by a pit bull over by Kona Skate Park. I was running up the street and I think it was a puppy. And I ran past the end of this privacy fence and it was like a streak. This pit bull comes out and actually hit me on my leg, and then just kind of did that thing where they run past you like a bull. They turn around and he wanted to come back and get me, and I told him to get back in his yard. So, you know, pit bulls, I've seen a lot of those, and wish people would keep them chained. But I don't run with mace or pepper spray. People ask me that. Although when I start heading out towards some of the more rural areas, I might consider that, because I remember training for Ironman triathlon and riding my bike out Old Plank Road, and dogs would actually chase me on my bike, and I can't run 20 miles an hour. So I know there's some roads that I'll probably have to take some pepper spray or mace to make sure that I can stay safe. It's funny when you get into some of these neighborhoods and you spend a lot of time in them, you really start getting a feel. I almost feel like I know the neighborhood. I remember running an area off of Powers Avenue, and every morning I would in my run about the same time, and I would head back down University to 95, and I would see the same guy every morning at the same time on this BMX bike, wearing headphones, going to work or whatever. I would see the same kids at the bus stop. I would see the same bumper stickers when I pull up the lights. When you get into these routines, you really do start kind of feeling like you're a part of these neighborhoods. You really immerse yourself into them. And it makes me think about, am I allowed to be in these neighborhoods sometimes? Do I have permission? Especially in some of the neighborhoods where I maybe don't fit in. It really does make me do some soul searching to think, am I really entitled to be in these neighborhoods? Am I trespassing? And I think about the stories like Ahmaud Arbery, when we don't know all the facts of what he was doing in that neighborhood. All we know is he was ambushed running down the middle of a street, and he was killed. And it makes me think, how can that happen? How can someone be running down the middle of the street and ambushed and not allowed to just run? And so I truly do think about things like this when I'm in the runs, because hopefully nobody in Jacksonville would think about, hurting a crazy white guy half naked running down the middle of their street. And so that guy's, yeah. I'm not a shooter like that, but I don't wear a whole lot of bright clothing when I'm in these neighborhoods. Typically, unlike what you should do as a pedestrian, I wear a lot of dark clothing because I want to blend in. I do have a little blinky light that I turn on if I see cars coming my way so that they can see me. I remember running in Arlington, and I don't see too much happening. Like I said, it's pretty dead these times of the morning. But I remember running through an area off of Merrill, and this guy comes running out of the front of this house with another guy following him, dropping F-bombs, yelling at him. And then one guy gets in the car and the other guy's pounding the car. I just slowly kind of made my way to one end of the street and just kind of slipped away. But you really don't see too much of that, but I do try to blend in and not let myself be seen as I go through these neighborhoods. I've run through areas of Phillips Highway that are interesting. And I remember one day I was running up Phillips, and this lady, apparently she'd been out all night, and she drives up and hits a light, and she goes, "Run, Forrest, run!" Like, really, I'm not that guy. I remember going into Eureka Gardens on Cassett, and I was at a light, waiting for the light to change, and this black lady rolled down her window, and she said, "Hey, you." And she was talking to me. "Be careful." And I thought, I appreciate that. Thank you for knowing that I didn't belong around here, but you wanted me to be careful. I will tell you that it's been fun doing this project because there's a community of crazy people like me around this world. There's about 59,000 people trying to run every street of their city. Currently, I'm ranked 29th out of 59,000 in terms of the number of streets that I've run. The number one guy in the world is a black guy in Berlin, Germany, a guy named Dennis. And Dennis is incredible. I've run 10,000 streets. He's run 25,000 streets, and he is fast. But Dennis does this, and probably one of the same reasons I do it is just for mental health. He's got some demons, and he's kind of explained them to me before, but he does this to kind of keep the blood flowing and keep the, to help himself. And it's really interesting to see how people do this for mental wellness. Crazy OCD combined with endurance tendencies. But it really is something that if I don't go out for a run, my wife will tell me, would you please go out for a run, get out of the house. But one of my good friends is actually the guy running every street in Houston. So we're number one, he's number two in terms of land mass. And we'll share tips and tricks sometimes. We talk about, the ways to run cul-de-sacs. You don't want to run them all clockwise because after a while your hips are going to start hurting. So the next one you run counterclockwise and then you run clockwise. And so we share tips and tricks of the ways that we're doing all of these projects. I've been running through parts of Arlington and Southside, and one day I was running and all of a sudden the sky was much faster than me, comes up, and he said, "Hey, what you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm running every street in Jacksonville." He goes, "That's cool." And so we started running and found out that he had just won the breast cancer marathon, the Ghana, a couple of weeks before. And so we started running together. So I've really met some really interesting people doing this project. And I've had friends meet me at the end of the driveway, looking at you, Gigi Carroll, with her Believe shirt on, speaking of Ted Lasso. And so it's been fun running and having people wake up at god-awful hours of the morning to come see me. Typically, the morning starts, the alarm goes off at 4:40 because I want to be where I'm going to be running by 5 o'clock. Like I said, those are the quiet hours. And then typically run for about an hour, hour and a half, so I can be home by 7 o'clock. So that's the normal routine. I've been seen some interesting things. We were running down Rampart over near Collins, and we saw an SUV crash in the woods with the lights on and nobody inside it. I'm not sure what happened there, but I've run over by Regency at the intersection of Southside and Atlantic. I didn't know it, but there's a confidential, high-tech, top-secret DOD facility, and I ran through the gate. Apparently they make ceramics for missiles or something, and the guy comes up on me on a golf cart and said, "Son, you shouldn't be in here." He said, "But you look good." I'm like, "Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that." Like I said, this project, it's been really amazing in that you can understand what's going on in your city, things that most of us, I would suggest that most of us maybe drive 5% of the streets in Jacksonville if we're lucky. And then you think about maybe seeing more of that, 65% or even 100%. I remember when what's the fellow's name that wrote the article? Oh my gosh, in the Times Union, Mark Woods, when he wrote the article, and he said, I walked this city from west to east and the north to south. What I did, Marshall's trying to make that look just pedestrian, but it's true because I really want to know what's going on in the city. I get this super heightened sense of awareness because it's so still. I can hear everything. I can smell. I can smell cigarette smoke or perfume a block ahead of time because it's really still in the morning. But you have to keep your head on a swivel when you're in some of these areas to make sure that you know what's going on and people can't surprise you. But with that, I think it just all goes back to be curious, not judgmental, and really understand what's going on in Jacksonville. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
What's the furthest you've run at a time? Like, have you done a marathon at a time, or what's the most you've run?
Yeah, so I've done, so far I've done 20 marathons, mostly breast cancer marathon and the Jackson Marathon.
Oh, no, as far as this.
Oh, for this project? Yeah, so for most of these projects, I think 15 miles was probably the longest. It was over in Alberta's neighborhood off Schindler and all that area. And I tell you, there's 14,780 streets right now, but that area over there behind the Target on Oakley, I mean, the number of streets that they're adding, they gotta stop. Because there's a lot of streets being added in Jacksonville every day. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Marshall, do you have a job to actually pay something?
I do. And that's why mornings start at 4:40. I have to be at the office at 8 o'clock. So it's a lot of early mornings. A lot of early to bed too, so. Yes, sir.
How about the gated communities? Do you have any trouble getting in there?
So I won't climb I have climbed a couple of fences, not to get in the gated communities, but to get out. Typically, as I do this, people find out about the project and they'll say, "Hey, I'll just leave your name at the front gate." So I spoke to the Exchange Club back in December, and they put me up my name on the Deerwood list, and other folks have got me to other places. I have a neighbor who's in the Navy, and so he got me into NAS Jack, so I could do all those streets. So that was a lot of fun. So the rule right now is I'm only doing public roads, but if I can get into a gated community, I'll run those too. Yes, sir.
So you're in information technology. Is there anything that, I mean, I know you've already talked to the police and JFRB, but any positive thing you can tell the city other than potholes, and then maybe just thinking as a Rotarian, any projects we could do locally that really struck me?
There's so many projects that I can think of, and I was just telling Ken, I mentioned the discarded tires. There are so many discarded tires in the city and I know there's pickups occasionally, but that's always, something that I see. When we had the trash pickup problem a while back, I saw the trash slowly accumulate in a lot of these neighborhoods, and there was a lot of trash. I have a greater understanding of some of the needs in the community to probably identify some of those that, ways that we could help out as Rotarians for sure. Yeah.
Could you repeat the website that you said in the beginning?
So just go to every.st, and it'll take you straight to the map to follow the progress, and you can continue to follow the progress there. The one link has the overview of the map, and then one of the other links shows my runs run by run, and it shows the number of streets that I've completed on that run, the number that I've made progress on. Right now, Springfield East Side, I didn't realize it, but like a lot of those numbered streets, they're long, and they start like on this side and they go, and they're not like, they're broken up too. So you may have to pick up that street on the other side of 95. And so these streets are taking a lot longer. It's super easy going into one of these newer neighborhoods that has 50 cul-de-sacs, and I can knock out, 40 streets in a single run. This past Monday, I got 0 streets, and still I covered, 6-7 miles and didn't get a single street just because they're so long. That's one other thing. I talk to Jim Overton about this all the time. People annex the end of their streets sometimes. If there's nothing going on at the end of the street, they will put a fence across the end and kind of call it their own. I won't cross that fence to go into there because I've gone into some areas and there are legit preppers in this city that it looks like Mad Max. Converted RVs that are ready for the apocalypse. Barbed wire, spikes, dogs. I stay out of those. Well, if there's a fence and they're blocking a street that they've kind of called their own, congratulations, that's your street, man. Don't want any part of that, but it is interesting to see how some folks have annexed streets. I was over at by Swisher yesterday, and they blocked off part of Walnut. And I'll go back and look at the property appraisers database, the GIS system, to see, all right, was that really annexed, or did they just put fences across those streets? So it is interesting to see sometimes where people have put fences to claim roads. Yes, sir.
Sorry. 2 questions. 1, how do you handle highways? And 2, have there been any neighborhoods that you had a perception of before you ran through them that was either that has changed either positively or negatively since running through?
Yeah. So highways, for a while on this tool, they were claiming some highways as streets. I had already come up with a strategy that I was going to run Butler Boulevard with an empty gas can, and if I got stopped, I was going to tell them that my car ran out of gas, and I was going to get gas. Fortunately, they had taken Butler off of the map, so I don't have to call it that. I don't have to use that strategy. And I'm always thinking of new strategies of how to do things. There's a lot of neighborhoods that I've gone into. Again, I think about kids that used to make fun of me because I lived on the west side, and I had preconceived notions about a lot of neighborhoods. And then you go in, and you're like, this isn't what I thought it was. It's a lot different. And I think that's that whole be curious, not judgmental. You really don't understand until you get in there and see what's going on. And there's a lot of neighborhoods that I just thought I would never want to be a part of or live in. And they're actually not too bad. Yeah. Ed, yes, sir.
You talked about different neighborhoods. Have you seen any obvious discrepancies in terms of the level of service the city gives different areas.
Well, back to that, when I was talking about the garbage, yeah, there was certainly, that, I guess they call that Sin City back around Kona. There was a lot of trash that wasn't being picked up there during that period. And I would run in other neighborhoods and the trash was being picked up. It's also interesting in some of these neighborhoods to see the gentrification, to see houses being torn down in the middle of a lot of other houses, and new houses being built that are a lot nicer. That was a crazy, when I was running that whole area off of Arlington Road, people were running down there at 5 in the morning one morning, and there's these guys in the front yard welding stuff, playing loud music, and it's just, but it's interesting to see who is out those times of the morning and who isn't. But you can see sometimes that there is a little bit of a difference in the level of service. Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Marshall. That is so interesting. I can't imagine having that much energy. If you could share some of that with all of us, that'd be great. But thank you very much. Thanks for sharing that with us. And thanks to all of y'all for being here today. And thanks to our Zoomers for being with us. And thank you, AG Jerry, for being here. We appreciate it. Good to see you. Okay, so a couple of reminders. Next week is our annual Youth Award program. And it's a fun, it's one of the highlights, I think, of the year for us. We will start right at 12:30 next week. We'll start the meeting right at 12:30. So y'all try to get here early and get your food and get seated early so that we can take care of that. Don't forget the Emerald Trail Tour. See Alberta if you want to go. If you have not done that, I promise you will enjoy it. So if you have time to do that, please do that. That's this Friday, right, Alberta? I think it's Friday. And May 3rd, our next social, you'll get more information on that soon. And we have a board meeting in 5 minutes. And I believe that Alton Yates is going to lead us in a 4-way test from Zoom. So if you will stand and join us as Alton leads us in a 4-way test. Alton, it's all yours.
Will you please join me in the 4-way test? First,
The truth
second, will be
is it fair to all concerned.
third, will
Will it
be,
build goodwill and better friendships?
and fourth, will it be beneficial to all?
All concerned.
Great, thank you, Alton. And our quote for today. The only thing worse than starting something and failing is not starting something at all. Seth Godin. I think that applies to what Marshall just shared with us. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, Marshall, and prompting us to get started. So with that, I'll say have a great week, and we'll see you next week for Youth Awards. Oh, that's
Oh, they could learn a lot. Yeah. No, I think about them on the run. They need to get these things. They're further off. Yeah, not politics, just make it about the same. Yeah.